A very good evening, friends. Myself, Mr. Deepak Singh, again with the poetries to give some of explanation of the lines which I have written over there from Academy of Arts, allpoetry.com, Artiii the Jyoti. I hope you now onwards enjoying the poems from there. So, my friend, the site is as it is an allpoetry.com. As you go on there with an Artiii the Jyoti, and it is on the basis of Academy of Arts where the poetry is assembled, all the poetry is totally assembled over there. You can make it out, the lines, and may enjoy it by your course of understanding. So my friend, like every day, today I am with another poetry. I will be discussing a very unique poetry again today, which I had written today only. A very interesting poetry, I think so, which had got a lots of mingling words from different section, from different sector, from different subjects binded together to be get into the form of a poetic sense. Now, before to that, my friend, I must speak something about the poetry. What actually poetry may be or may have to be understood of. First of all, a poetry is an abstract construct. It is totally an abstract formation of deluge craft. The method of thinking, the advancement of thinking, the quantum of thinking there in the poetry enables a unique direction for those who are on the basis of experiments with mathematics or those who are too much empirical about it. It is the nature of a poet to think such an extent, to make assembly in his poetry in such a way that it compels any scientific personality who is too much imbibed in his own culture of his institution or by the subjects of which he or she has inculcated in herself or himself, to make out a sense and get an delicacy or melody or intricacies of something very soothing to get enjoyed of. Or what could be in better sense to be said that they get an aesthetic feeling from there. The aesthetic nature of a poetry indeed is an extent of enormous and abundant thinking in the sense of hypothetical way, in the sense of abstractism, which into very, very great extent has got a very artistic way of understanding. But if someone comes to the fact to get proof of, as of the mathematics we come across, to bring it into a proof or theorems of axiom, then there would be some kind of debate nurturing on, because the extent of a poetry is on the modalities of thinking. A poet thinks in an apparatus, a poet thinks on the aperture to bring on the blend of different subjects together to assemble an aesthetic, to bring an aesthetic feelings of understanding in the art of its writing. As a painter draws with the various of colors, with the spectrums of colors, he draws and brings out an art and brings out some kind of portrait or whatever the art, maybe the modern art or some kind of classical art. In the same way, the poetry too has got a chain or brains of words camouflage acting on. It has got some kind of assembly in such a way that tends the personality who are on their another terms of knowledge to get interested on that fact, to know it exactly, that what is the level or what is the extent or what beyond limit the thought may could have been. May seems to be funny, may seem to be interesting, may seems to be very curious. So these all are the waves, or these all are the crest and trough that goes on in the poetries, is the aesthetics or the intricacies of the poetry or the melodies of the poetry to work on, my friend. So this is the subject today that on which I will be discussing the first 4 lines of my poetry. On this particular facts which the issue what I have written on, the poetry name is the Spatial Clots, which unions with an Wetware Wields. And then comes the matrix of mind vectors. Now, my friend, these all words, spatial, is an artistic word even. But then also the spatial is a word that has imbibed from psychology. Clot. From where this word clot has come? This has come from biology. Wetware. From where this word has come from? This word has come from, again, from neuroscience. And Wields is the engineering. And then mind and the vectors. Again, it is in physical science. So from the topic, it is very much clear that how the words or the topic has assembled together to give a way of understanding through the various domains, subjects of various domains that has assembled together to give some kind of literary intricacy or some aesthetic meaning to bring on the poem, my friend. So let me just go on through the poetry. As it is said, the spatial clots, that is the union, the operational science I have used here, the union, that as we all know in a Venn diagram, my friend. In Venn diagram, we use the U as a capital U as a union and the inverse U as an intersection. So I have used the set theory union over here to give out little operational inflection over there to spatial clots union Wetware Wields. And when the spatial clots, what are the spatial clots, my friend? The spatial clots are different lines of force of understanding, the different clouds of thoughts that is going on in our mind with the atmosphere awareness log that is going on. Those clouds of thoughts are when they are getting clotted together, when they are making on a network, then a Wetware builds up. The Wetware communicates to each other. They bring out some kind of sense to each other. They bring out some kind of meaning to each other. And when this whole process very meticulously goes on, there are numerous mind vectors acting in the form of matrix. My friend, this in my hand, this is a pen. I know how to hold this pen. I will never try to just for a sense of experiment I'm saying on, I will never try to, with a single finger, I will never try to just pick up this pen or try to make out some essays to bring an application to this pen. Why? Because my friend, my mind vectors has got an application of that matrix through the Wetware network, which I have learned right in my early childhood to how to hold on the pen. The mind vectors is totally communicated in my mind. It is totally wired up through my Wetware with the spatial clots, which I had already known long time back. Therefore, whenever I need to write, I know the process of holding this pen. It is a matrical form that already has what I have already learned of. I will never allow, or even out of any sense to bring on another approach to hold on this pain, because I know that matrix of another approach or another configuration will not work if I ever allow it to, even without any practice. What I had learned long time back, the matrix which I have prepared in my mind vector through the spatial clouds and Wetware Wields, it is totally formed on, in a formative sense. The formula is totally formed on. Like this, all of our activities, my friend, that goes on are totally mathematically is done. Some done out of knowledge, too precise, too fine, too finesse. Some done without knowledge, but with trial and error, but done in the same way. Some done with a great deal of wisdom. Some done with not maybe of that much of knowledge, but to an extent of that facts. But anyway, all the way, the Wetware always supports itself. The Wetware, the brain completely in the form, tries to bring on a good aperture of use of its thought process, that is spatial clots, that it is garnering on. It is continuously in the formation of making each other known. The temporal section, the limbic system, the occipital system, the parietal system, the sensory motor system, the parietal lobe system, the frontal lobe, the cortex, the cerebellum, they are not seen, but has to be unseen in seen, in the form or in the sense of consciousness, always. If we make a sense of that, yes, like this way something is happening on. What is wrong, my friend, to be get aware? What is wrong, my friend, to be get conscious by that virtue? Why not? We should be conscious of the fact by knowing what is unseen to us, which is in us, and be conscious of that by virtue. That is the way I have tried to write this poem. I will be discussing the first 4 lines. Let me read the first line, my friend. So this was the introductory part which I have tried to give about the poem which I have written here. So as the poem says that the spatial clots with unions with Wetware Wields matrix the mind vectors, the favors that when tangent to the resultant system crops to features. My friend, what the fable here is made on to understood. The fable is the synchronization of our awareness. The fable is the thithering method of our knowing, that we are absorbing the sensory consequences. We are absorbing the sensory quotient each and every time with our feeds of our awareness terms. These are all the fables continuously. They have got a different magnitude terms. Some have got some different decibel. Some have gotten dimming of lights. Some have gotten different kind of order. Some have gotten different kind of taste. Some kind of different kind of temperature. These are all the types of fables, awareness fables, my friend. And then when they get tangent to the resultant system, what is the resultant system? And what is the tangent? That means when it gets touched on, they are touching us. These lines of force are tangent to us. And when these lines of force are tangent to us, they are bringing on the crops. They are bringing on the crops of understanding, the crops of thinking, the crops of features of knowing in us. They are harvesting in our Wetware. They are harvesting in our synaptic sense. The cerebellum is totally on the sense of just like meter in our home as that provides electricity, that meters the complete sense of electricity in our home. In the same way, the cerebellum too act in that form. It meters the complete wetware of our system. The temporal system. The temporal system has got a forecasting. It relays. It processes the occipital system. It takes the tangent touch through the rays, the lights, and make us aware of all the spectrum, the vibgeo, color, the hues. So like this way, the first line I said, my friend, that fables that when tangent to the resultant system crops to features. Onto the programming hues. There are many ways of knowing of what has to be done or what has not to be done. The complex adjective finer in detail. In this way, what is or what seems to be very complex, suppose my friend, if someone is making on some learning, by this process only, by this process of attention and concentration, this learning process, which is a very complex term in the very first instance, suppose my friend, someone is trying to read any chapter of mathematics or learn any chapter of mathematics. While he or she goes the first chapter, first page of the chapter, it becomes very weird, very, very difficult for him or her to get across what it is there. So that is a complex part. But slowly, when he goes through the lesson and reads out all the process and goes through the example and practice it out, that turns out to be an adjective of fineness. What is adjective? A beauty has to be described of. A beauty has to be made of. So that is being told over here, that onto the programming hues, the complex adjective finer in detail. So that adjectives, the beautiness, that complex what it was to be found out to be very difficult, comes out to be an adjective of fineness. That means it is overcome. It is done. This part has been written in this poetic sense in such a way, my friend. The words used over here, just like here, the complex. From the complex here, it has to be understood that it is difficult. And then the adjectives, as to describe, as give it a sense, to bring out some elaborate meaning to the subjectivity of verb or the noun. The third line, my friend, as it is said, out to the logic of verbs. And then when it is known, when some art or something has to be learning on or something has to be learned on, and when the adjective is clear, then it comes to the logic of verb. It comes into action. It takes a dynamic sense. So out to the logic of verb, the schedule of apparatus is equation due to tedious. And then the bindings of the neurons of our brain settle up with a unique type of equilibrium. Equilibrium, just like in the sense of an equation, as we come across the equation. Suppose, for example, my friend, if I say F equal to ma, force equal to mass into acceleration, it is the equation. It is the equation on the left hand side, just speaking about the force, and it is equivalent to mass into acceleration. In the same way, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere is under the balance of an equilibrium. The equilibrium of knowing of what it has been or what it is doing on or learning on. That it has assent with an adjective, and then it is bringing on to the logic of verbs to then bring on an equation. That means then coming on here, equation is an example that has been told F equal to ma, but the equation here has denoted by the in poetic sense in such a way that there is a circuit, equivalent circuit prepared through the to the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere confluence, agreement. The left hemisphere and the right hemisphere comes out with the terms of the temporal collage to an agreement. Yes, the equation is formed. That means it has been learned what it has been. And with that, the fourth line, as it has been explained, the axes that stand by the points, and thus an axis comes into formation. A formation of axis of each and every unit of work we do has got an axis. Our earth has got an axis. All the planets are revolving on its axis. All of them, we can take the philosophy from there, that since they all are revolving and rotating on the axis and orbits itself, even there is some way that each and every activity vector that is going on in our mind has got an axis of reference frame acting on with an axis with an orbit even. Why should not we? Isn't it not these all of the imaginary lines? We know that they are rotating and revolving, but we cannot make it out. They are all imaginary lines. So if we can profess the imaginary line there, why should not we bring out the same imaginary line in our mind too? Why I am asking this all things, my friend? I am asking this all things because by this process the consciousness percentage through this virtue will increase. The more conscious we will be of the fact of our awareness log. And out of that perpendicular generator in mutual of mind, the Wetware features. So there is always a mutual formation of our Wetware with the mind. There is a perpendicular generator. That means completely there is a formation of some geometrical terms. Otherwise, without any geometry, here perpendicular generator is explained to be or bring out to be known as terms of geometry, because without geometry no work has got any way. We need geometry. So that is where the fourth line, as has been very nicely said, my friend, the axes that stand by the points of the perpendicular generator in mutual of mind and Wetware features. With the combination of mind and Wetware, a features comes on. So I have tried to bring on the first 4 lines of this poem of Spatial Clots, and this Spatial Clot, which is the space clots, that means space network acting together, the space mesh acting together, just like a clot. When we get some bruise, we get a small cut. After some time, you find there is a clot over there. But yes, that is a mechanism, biological mechanism that is going on over here. But what is the philosophy extract of that? The philosophy extract of that clot is the network of fibrinogen. The network over there. And that is the spatial clot. I have written the poetry in that way, the spatial clot. With the union of Wetware Wields, obviously Wetware Wields, the neurons are acting all in the welding, riveting each other, helping each other. Yes, they are the best friend. The neurons, each and every, now my friend, we have come across the history of 13.6 billion years ago. We have got or known to this unit that something 13.6 billion years ago, a Big Bang theory started. My friend, there are even billion, unit of billion, even in our brain too. Same billion. The units billion is used in our brain too. Yes, there are neurons too. So why should not we even think of that aspect also, that there's something very valuable in us, that is our way to our mind. My main motives of making this all things to say like this way to bring on an approach, a covert approach to our own self, little bit, so that it become into too much of helpful, because this helpness of our own self, knowing oneself too much by our own application of acting, brings out the enormous or abundance of the work culture outside we can do. 35% of the brain has been used by the great scholar Sir Albert Einstein. 35% only of his brain has been used, it was found by the scientific evidence. Only 35%. Only 35%. 65% was not used. 65% self-performer was not used by him. Only 35% can yield such a density of work, or such a discourse of work to us, that has turned on the complete history of science. So if we get aware through the covert culture of our brain and Wetware to that much extent, and we can use it more of knowing that it is going on in that way too, with an activity of covert and overt culture alignment, and bring on the consciousness approach, or bring on the virtue of the consciousness approach of our own self, without the self which is in overt term, we will be more proficient in our work and in our culture. I will pause today so far. Thank you very much, my friend, for listening me. So myself, Mr. Deepak Singh.